The most ruthless form of power isn't destruction. It isn't confrontation. It isn't even revenge. It's silence. It's withdrawal. It's leaving someone without an ending, no explanation, no closure. Machiavelli understood something most people overlook. Humans aren't truly addicted to love or even to pleasure. They're addicted to certainty. The mind hungers for resolution. It wants a clear conclusion, a tidy box to seal the past inside. Without that, people begin to unravel. They replay moments endlessly, searching for meaning, desperate for clarity. They can't move on. That's why withholding closure is one of the most devastating psychological tactics you can use, because closure gives people peace. Without it, they live in unrest, and that unrest keeps them tied to you, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. People think they crave happiness, but what they truly crave are answers. Why did this happen? Where do I stand? How does this story end? Think of someone left without an explanation. Outwardly, they may seem fine. Inwardly, they're still bound to that question. Why? That question becomes leverage. When you give someone closure, you release them. You cut the cord. They walk away lighter, calmer, free. But when you deny them answers, they can't let go. You live rent-free in their mind. This is the power Machiavelli understood, the art of restraint. He warned, never explain more than necessary, because every explanation sets people free. Every mystery keeps you alive in their thoughts. A complete story dies. An incomplete one echoes forever. That's why Shakespeare's plays ended. But Machiavelli's influence never did. He spoke in principles, not conclusions, ideas meant to be reinterpreted endlessly. His words never truly finished, which is why they still resonate centuries later. Apply this to people. Never hand them the final page. If you explode, explain, and walk out, they'll sleep peacefully in a week. But if you leave quietly, no explanation, no emotion, no closure, they'll never stop wondering. The unfinished always holds more power than the finished, because the mind cannot abandon an unsolved mystery. Machiavelli advised appearing less transparent than you are. When you leave people guessing, they do the work for you. Don't explain and they'll invent explanations. Don't reveal your intent and they'll imagine your next move. Don't give closure and they'll rewrite the story endlessly. Every imagined version keeps you alive in their mind. They remain trapped in the silence you left behind. While you've already moved on, free, untouched and far ahead, notice how often people demand closure in relationships, in arguments, in betrayal. They say, I just want honesty or I just need to understand. But what they're really asking for is freedom. What they mean is, please release me from this attachment. They believe that knowing the truth will heal them. But closure is often nothing more than a final illusion. When someone begs for closure, what they're truly saying is, end my dependence on you. Take away your hold over me. If you give them that, you lose your leverage. If you withhold it, you remain the gravity they can't escape. Machiavelli would have said, if you desire control, never hand people the key to their own escape. We live in a culture obsessed with healthy communication. We're told to end things cleanly, to be clear, to be transparent, to offer closure. But ask yourself, who truly benefits from closure? It doesn't serve you. It serves them. It gives them peace. It gives them clarity. It gives them the dignity of walking away satisfied. So why offer that gift, especially to those who have hurt you, betrayed you, or doubted you? Silence cuts deeper than any insult. It's colder, sharper, and far more unforgettable than words. You don't curse them. You don't explain. You simply walk away. And they are left forever holding the weight of an unfinished sentence. Every explanation you give is a rope. With enough explanation, they climb out of confusion and free themselves. Machiavelli would warn, never over-explain. Speak less than you know. Reveal less than you think. Leave gaps in every story. Because the mind cannot bear an empty space. It will fill those gaps with imagination, paranoia, endless replaying. And imagination is always crueler than reality. Silence turns their own mind into your greatest weapon. Think of the lover you leave. If you end things with a long, emotional message explaining everything, they'll cry. They'll process, they'll heal. Months later, they move on. But if you disappear without a word, leaving only questions, they'll never stop thinking about you. They'll wonder if you'll return. If they did something wrong, if they misread everything, you'll linger in every love that follows. Think of the enemy you confront. If you scream your reasons and make your stance clear, they'll feel justified in hating you. But if you walk away in silence, they're left replaying the battle alone, uncertain what you truly felt or planned. They can't prepare for your next move because they don't know what it is. Or the colleague you disagree with. If you explain your reasoning, they nod, they understand, the tension fades. But if you withhold your thoughts, let the silence hang. They'll spend days second-guessing themselves, wondering what you think of them. That uncertainty is power. Fear fades, threats lose force, even pain softens with time. But uncertainty, that never leaves. The absence of closure keeps the wound open, because the mind can't find a way to stitch it shut. It bleeds every time the memory surfaces, and people can't stop revisiting it. That's why Machiavelli would say, closure is mercy, and mercy weakens power. When you deny someone closure, you deny them peace. And without peace, they remain bound to you. So what is the true lesson here? If you want power, you cannot afford to give people peace. If you want control, you cannot hand them the ending they crave. The neat conclusion that would free them from thinking about you. Silence, mystery, absence. These are the sharpest, most potent weapons you possess. Not because they destroy people outright, but because they make people destroy themselves, slowly, endlessly, tirelessly, all in the shadow of your absence. When their own mind becomes the prison guard of their emotions, when their thoughts trap them in loops of uncertainty and speculation, you have mastered one of the darkest, most insidious laws of psychological leverage. A clean ending is a release. An unfinished story is a prison. Closure allows someone to rebuild their life, to heal and move forward. Suspense keeps them circling, obsessing over every word, every silence, every fleeting glance, trying to decode something that may never be revealed. That is the essence of Machiavelli's hidden law of power. You don't truly wound people by confronting them, by striking them, or by yelling at them in a fight. You wound them by never finishing the sentence, by leaving their mind running laps in your silence, always a step behind, chasing after a version of you that no longer exists. Once you leave someone without closure, you no longer need to intervene. They will take over the work themselves. They will invent reasons. They will replay the past endlessly. They will blame themselves. Blame you, reinterpret events, reach out, seek answers, try to reconcile, even seek revenge. And eventually, they spiral right back into dependence, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically. Meanwhile, you, the one who walked away, remain untouched. You've already won. Here lies the secret. When you deny someone closure, you create an emotional imbalance. You walk away complete. They walk away open. And that open loop dominates their subconscious, whether they admit it or not. They may post, laugh, speak, move on externally, but all of it is performance. Beneath the surface, the story never ended. They cannot stop returning to the thoughts, the memories, the questions that linger because your absence left them suspended. The dynamic becomes asymmetrical. You've processed it. They haven't. You are silent. They speak to themselves endlessly. You have closed the file. They remain stuck on the same page, unable to move forward, unable to draw the final line. This is not cruelty. This is not manipulation. This is strategy. Machiavelli would call it positioning. You do not maintain power by forcing people to act or by controlling their every move. You maintain power by becoming the unsolved question in their minds, by ensuring that as long as they wonder about you, as long as they doubt and question, you remain present, unchallenged, untouchable, and dominant. Every glance they cast back at the past, every late-night thought, every imagined explanation reinforces your presence in their mind. Every time they seek understanding and fail, your influence grows stronger. You are no longer an actor in the story. You are the story itself, the unsolved puzzle, the echo that refuses to fade. As long as uncertainty lingers, you control the emotional field. You are the gravity that shapes their orbit. Even if they pretend indifference, even if they act detached, The unfinished nature of your departure ensures that you are never fully gone. And that, ultimately, is the quietest, most devastating form of dominance, invisible yet absolute, gentle yet impossible to escape, leaving them tethered to a question that only you can answer, yet will never answer. One of the most potent applications of this law in modern times is what we now call ghosting. But let's be clear, ghosting isn't always a sign of emotional immaturity or cowardice. It can be weaponized, used consciously, deliberately. It becomes one of the most effective tools of disorientation and control, a psychological lever that shifts the balance of power entirely into your hands. Here's how it works. You begin by creating a connection that is fast, intense, and emotionally charged. You mirror their emotions, reflect their desires, anticipate their needs. You bond in ways that feel urgent and consuming, forming a web of dependence that they don't even recognize forming. And then you vanish. No argument, no confrontation, no closure, just silence. Suddenly, they are suspended in a vacuum, emotionally revved up with no outlet, no explanation, no way to process the absence. They begin to overanalyze every interaction. They blame themselves. They wonder if they did something wrong. They feel rejected, abandoned, confused, and all the while, you are untouchable. You are everywhere and nowhere. You have become a phantom in their psyche. The result is inevitable. They dream about you. They fantasize, they fear, they hate, they crave, they hope. They replay your interactions endlessly. They imagine ways to fix things. They speculate about your next move. Some will even stalk your behavior online, piecing together fragments of your life, trying to rewrite the story in which they regain you. All of this mental, emotional, and psychic energy is now directed toward you. All of it is leverage. And it doesn't matter whether it manifests as love, anger, obsession, or resentment. Obsession is obedience in disguise. But to wield this tactic at the highest level, you cannot act randomly. You cannot simply disappear without intention. Every step must be engineered with precision. Step 1. Give them a peak emotional experience. Right before you vanish, create a surge of emotion, a moment of deep praise, passionate intimacy, or raw vulnerability. This spike creates contrast, and contrast creates memory. Memories, anchored in intensity, are nearly impossible to forget. Step 2. Leave at the high point. Most people end relationships during conflict, boredom, or decline. You do the opposite. You disappear when things are at their emotional apex. This violates expectations, breaks the anticipated narrative arc, and hooks the mind. They are left chasing a high they never fully experienced, addicted to a resolution that will never come. Step 3. Say nothing. No explanations, no excuses, no clarifications. Not "I can't do this," not "it's not you," not "I need time." Silence allows the mind to project endlessly. The less you provide, the more they create. Their imagination fills the gaps with obsession, paranoia, and longing. Step 4. Optional reappearance, subtle, controlled. If you choose to return, do so without explanation. A like, a brief message, an ambiguous emoji, just enough to stir the ashes, letting them fan the fire themselves. You are neither hero nor villain. You are the unresolved character. And unresolved characters, unlike resolved ones, endure far longer in the psyche. Here is the ultimate psychological twist. People who never receive closure do not merely suffer, they return. Not always to reconcile, not always for revenge, but because the mind tells them they must finish the story, resolve the loop, restore balance. But there is no ending. That is by design. When they reach out, they do so weakened, confused, and emotionally vulnerable. They no longer negotiate from strength. They negotiate from uncertainty. And you, by contrast, hold positional advantage, emotional detachment, and narrative control. You have created a gap. They dwell in it endlessly, thinking of you, planning around you, replaying memories that will never be complete. And you remain untouched, free, and always a step ahead. That gap, that silent, unresolved space, is the root of psychological dominance. Machiavelli's philosophy was never about cruelty for its own sake. It was about control, about positioning yourself so that others are constantly reacting to you, never the other way around. Refusing to give closure aligns perfectly with this principle. When you leave someone without resolution, you force them into your rhythm. You force them to internalize you. You erase their sense of self-determination. You insert yourself into their emotional framework. From that point, even your silence becomes a command. You never demand loyalty, yet they offer it. You never ask for attention, yet they fixate on you. You never justify your absence, yet they chase your reasoning. This is not emotional recklessness. This is cold, deliberate, strategic leverage. A kind of influence that cannot be bought, taught, or imitated. It is earned through one brutal choice. Do not explain. Do not close the door. Leave it open and let them wonder forever. The human mind cannot accept what it cannot finish. People do not need permission to hate you, but they need permission to forget you. And when you withhold that permission, when you refuse closure, you become more than a memory. You become a scar, a reference point, an identity marker that follows them everywhere. Machiavelli's true genius was not in creating obsession. It was in positioning that obsession in public so that others, without realizing it, defend you, serve you, and chase you even in your absence. This is where psychological leverage evolves into political power. It's no longer about one person. It is about controlling the room, by controlling how your silence is perceived. To master this, you must understand the interplay of closure, status, and social scarcity. When someone doesn't receive closure from you, they look elsewhere. The first place they turn is other people. They ask, they speculate, they share fragments. Have you heard from them? What did they mean by that? Why did they leave like that? Each time they speak, your name spreads. Not because you are present, but because you are unresolved. Your absence becomes a phenomenon. People orbit it. They whisper. They guess. They invent narratives. Here is where it becomes truly Machiavellian. You did not demand attention. You did not explain. You may not have even been physically present, yet your silence now dictates the conversation. They are not gossiping. They are branding you. You become an image, and images are far harder to erase than people. Scarcity amplifies value. It is one of the oldest truths in economics and human behavior. What is rare is precious. What is inaccessible is desirable. What vanishes without warning is unforgettable. By removing yourself without closure, you create not just psychological scarcity, but social scarcity. People remark, "He doesn't speak to anyone anymore." She disappeared just like that. They never receive explanations, and that scarcity becomes reputation. Even if others resent you, they respect your control. Even if unspoken, they wonder, what does this person know that I don't? Why are they so calm? Why do they never need to justify themselves like everyone else? That wonder is obedience in disguise. It is the sign you have risen above the need for validation. And when others crave closure while you remain above it, you dominate, not by status, but through emotional independence. This is the rarest, most powerful social trait. Rare traits, like rare metals, always gain value. Here lies the paradox Machiavelli would savor. The more someone is confused by you, the more they publicly reaffirm loyalty just to preserve their own sense of identity. They may feel neglected, rejected, or misunderstood. Yet to protect their ego, they defend you. Because admitting they never received closure would mean admitting they weren't important enough. They lost control. They chase someone who no longer chases them. Instead of admitting defeat, they reframe your absence as mysterious, intelligent, principled. They do your PR for you. They preserve your reputation to preserve their dignity. That is leverage you cannot buy, and you didn't even speak. Machiavelli would call this untouchable legitimacy. It is not given, it is felt, and it is built through contradiction, present but distant, remembered but unreachable, respected but not available, admired but never fully understood. This balance creates an emotional mirage. People chase you, speak of you, swear loyalty to you, yet you remain forever out of reach. And because you never provide closure, they never stop trying to reach. The pursuit becomes their cage. You become the warden, and they love the prison, because the alternative, indifference, is unbearable. This is how emotional confusion evolves into ritualized loyalty. They check your messages years later, They revisit your words. They study your silences. And eventually, they teach your legend to others to validate their own unfinished story. Once this effect is created, the loop of confusion, loyalty, and social speculation, your only task is to never disrupt it. Never explain. Never clarify. Never return with closure. If you appear without answers. Speak but without explanation. Smile and say, some things don't need to be said. Maintain your silhouette. Never step back into full view. The power was never in what happened. It was in what was left unsaid. Closure would destroy it. Mystery sustains it. This is not a tactic for the weak. It is for the strong, the confident, the strategically minded. Because the stronger someone is, the more they rely on control, certainty, and understanding. Deny them that, vanish from their framework, and you confront their ego. Even the strongest spiral. They reach out. They seek answers. But you never give them what they want. Never give closure. Let their mind become your cage. Let their ego do your work. Let your silence rule louder than words ever could. Power is not about presence. It is about absence. When you never give closure, you do not just control emotions. You infiltrate reality itself. Every decision, every choice they make is shaped by the gap you left behind. That gap becomes sacred, untouchable, almost divine. This is the final evolution of Machiavelli's law of psychological leverage. From confusion to obsession to myth. When someone cannot close the chapter on you, they do the next best thing. They turn you into a story, and stories live longer than explanations ever will. Every person they meet after you is measured against the ghost of your silence. Not because you were perfect, but because you were never fully real. You left before they could define you. You disappeared before they could dissect you. You stopped talking before they could destroy your mystery. Nothing else measures up. The closure they crave becomes the prison they inhabit. And as they struggle to understand why they cannot move on, they unknowingly raise your status higher in their mind. They say things like, "No one made me feel that way. I don't know why, but I still think about them." These are not compliments. They are symptoms of psychological submission. When someone defends your impact without your presence, they are no longer thinking freely. They are worshipping a feeling you engineered through silence. Had you explained, had you offered closure, had you walked them step by step through your reasoning, they would understand. They would detach. The spell would break. But silence is the cliffhanger. It denies resolution. It builds the addictive tension of almost knowing. Closure is self-destruction. You vanish so completely that nothing remains to attach to. Too neat, too digestible, and thus powerless. Machiavelli would call this strategic cruelty. You do not scream. You do not punish. You do not say goodbye. You simply disappear, and the world left behind remains enthralled. Even hatred keeps you relevant. Even resentment grants you attention. And above all else, you must never be forgettable.